Are you tired of people always telling you what you want to hear and not what you need to hear? Me too. Are you ready to actually do something about it? Hi, I'm Loren Lahav, and for the past 30 plus years, I've been blessed to speak and to impact thousands of people around the world. I've shared the stage with the world's top thought leaders, including Barbara Walters, Tony Robbins, Barbara Corcoran, and Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm also a personal development, lifestyle, and business coach, event producer, and entrepreneur with businesses in over 25 countries. I'm a wife and a proud mama to 3 and a bonus mom to 1. Trust me when I tell you, it took me many years of buying into my old story of I'm not enough and lots of grit to finally let go of the BS. So I understand firsthand what it means and what it took. They don't call it the School of Hard Knocks for nothing. This podcast is my way of breaking down the BS filters of what we say, what we do, and how we interact with others. I will be sharing what worked for me, yet more importantly, what didn't work for me. This is a no fluff podcast where we will address real life issues that seem to surface when you least expect it, relationship conflict and breakdowns, and real solutions. I will share from my life experiences and those of other everyday heroes, as well as the world's top experts, are all here to help you grow through the process of letting go and finally expressing your true voice, who you are and what you stand for. In a world of political correctness and living our lives on social media, it's hard to know what is real. And are you taking in so much information but not applying what you've learned? In my life, I always look to the people who understand what I'm going through and are willing to get honest and forthcoming with me to help me grow through these challenges. Trust me, I've had them all, and I'm going to take the time to be as real as possible and get to solutions. I've had financial issues, parenting issues, marriage issues, emotional issues. You know, the list goes on. I've learned from my challenges, I've grown from them, and continue to learn from them. I see them now as opportunities. With this podcast, we're going to tune up our lives. I'll be your cup of espresso to get you through whatever you're going through in your life that's holding you back, to give you that confidence and trust of knowing someone is there to help and guide you, yet you have to do the work. So strap in, hang on tight, and let's get real. Well, I am beyond thrilled. Oh my gosh, you cutie patootie that's here to join us today. So Christine Gale, I adore you. I remember when I first met you and I was like, oh, we're going to be hanging out a lot. And I'm very grateful that we are. I want to talk a little bit just about you. You're such a powerhouse. You're such a fireball and inspiration for so many people. And I think like me, we have something in common, and that is that we're a little misunderstood sometimes. Ooh. So I would love to talk a little bit about, life and how we can be misunderstood and how that's also, though, given us fuel. I mean, I know what it's done for me. I know that you're an attorney. You can share a little bit about your background. You're a mama of 4. You've been married for 20 plus years. I think you'll have to share with everybody. But you have a wonderful podcast. But can we talk a little bit about what being misunderstood has meant to you and who you've become because of being misunderstood?
Ooh, all right, Loren. First of all, wow, what a great question. So as soon as you said it, I was like, aha, that's a word I haven't used for it in a long, long time. So to be misunderstood, for me, I look at it a little bit differently. I don't think I'm so much as misunderstood as I am just so unique because I really have a powerful and potent blend of masculine and feminine. And it's so rare in womanhood today. It's so rare to have women who are showing up with this blend of power and strength, but also softness and empathy. And oftentimes, especially I'll just use an example, as a female attorney, I would say that the vast majority of women attorneys I come into contact are super living into their feminine. And that was me several years ago before I had a wonderful experience with one of the top personal development people in the world who opened my eyes to the fact that I was squelching a really important part of me. So for me, I don't know if I feel so much misunderstood as I do think I am super unique.
That's funny. That's what I say. It's so funny because when I was, as you know, I always talk about staying true, and so I was challenged on it by someone. They go, "What does staying true really mean? What does it mean to you?" And I remember I was in my bedroom and I was doing my 30 push-ups, and I was like, well, "What does really mean staying true mean?" And so my dog is there. She's agreed with us, and I said, staying true is really that you can be badass and you can be beautiful. You can be both. You don't have to choose between one or the other. And so that's when I was like, that's it. That's what it really means. And like you said, it's an opportunity for us to honor all parts of ourselves. So, tell us a little bit about, I know that you have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about the name behind your podcast and where that came from.
Okay, so I am obsessed with the name of my podcast, which is Girl Out of Order. So I'm an attorney, and I was trying to think of a unique podcast name that encompassed not only a little bit of a nod to the legal side, but also a nod to the fact that I am living a path that isn't traditional in any sense, really. And so, we think about those old time shows where the judge will pound his or her gavel and say, "You're out of order." And I'm at the point now in life where I'm like, damn straight, I'm out of order. And I'm embracing that. And so I started this podcast out of a fierce desire to help women fully embrace their unique selves, how they were designed, who they were designed to be, and start designing and creating compelling lives from that inner knowing. Because what's happened in womanhood, and I'm raising an entire girl tribe. I've got 4 daughters, 23 down to 17, is that we spend so much time scanning the horizon of what everybody else expects of us that we stop asking the question of who we truly are, what do we really want, what are our highest values, and what are we no longer going to tolerate. And so I started this podcast because I really wanted to delve more into identity work with women and give them the courage to do that work. Because the last thing I'll say with that is what I find, especially in working with my divorce clients and women more in midlife, it's not like there was some bomb that necessarily went off in their life that caused them to lose their way and lose their connection to their true selves. It was that there was this slow erosion over time. That's the tiny compromises, the times they don't stand up for themselves, the times they don't ask for the promotion or the raise that they're entitled to. It's those little 2 millimeter negative shifts that cause them to lose sight of who they actually are. And so Girl Out of Order to me is a safe place. It's a community where we can come as we are, but never stay where we are, keep moving forward and progressing towards that beautiful life.
Love that. That's why I adore you, and I'm grateful that you're part of this beautiful journey together. And you were just with us at True Voice. I have a question. Did you have a 2 millimeter shift for yourself where you saw yourself kind of losing yourself?
Ooh, that's a really good question. The one that comes to mind for me is when I was in a legal partnership at a firm I was working at for years. And I could already tell, and my spirit was telling me that my values were no longer aligned with this woman that I'd started the law firm with. And yet I just kept saying, I'm not a businesswoman. I don't know how to do this on my own. It's too scary. I'm really loyal. She had actually gotten cancer while she was pregnant with twins that she'd wanted her whole life. So I just kept compromising and kept saying, making excuses for not taking the chance on what my spirit was telling me I needed to do. And so by the time I started my own law firm at the end of 2020, it was kind of scorched earth. And it's not like she didn't know how unhappy I was. Maybe she couldn't put her finger on it. But by the time I left, it was ugly, it was messy, and I left in a much weakened state. Whereas if I had listened to my intuition much earlier, I would be that much further along now.
But what did you learn? Well, what I love that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, right? It's like
Yeah.
getting yourself to the point of like of no return. But what did you learn from it? What did you learn because of that?
Well, I learned, well, there's a number of lessons, but the one that sticks out to me is the lesson that I'm actually in the midst of learning now. And it's learning how to elevate the value of uncertainty, learning how to be willing to live with the uncomfortable. Because what I wasn't willing to do is to live in the discomfort of starting my own business or leaving this person who had been really there for me during some of the hardest years of my marriage. And so the biggest lesson I take away from that is embrace that uncertainty, because there is another side to it. There is and sometimes it's like when a boat is leaving the harbor, you can see the calm seas out there, but you're not sure that boat's actually got what it takes to get over the waves to get to those calmer seas. And so that's probably one of my biggest takeaways.
That's probably why I've shown up in your life.
You are the harbinger of uncertainty, my friend.
Exactly. Right? I mean, exactly, because I think for me that, as you know, that just being in this world is like there's always something that's going to change. Always something. And so yeah, I think the story of my life is that of like embracing that of uncertainty. Not all the time, because obviously we've all been through some challenging times and gotten stuck in our own way. But like you said, there's certain relationships that you start justifying why that they're there, and that maybe that they were really there for a season, and honoring that season and looking and going, okay, well, who do I really need to step into and become for this next chapter or this next book in my life. So question, now that you've been through that, you've been through, with those shifts, and I know you said you have your 4 daughters. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self or your 17-year-old self?
Oh my gosh, if I could go back and talk to 18-year-old Christine, first of all, I would tell her to not sleep with that guy. Get out of that relationship sooner. Value yourself more than you value not losing that person who isn't good for you. Listen to your instincts because I teach my daughters, I've taught them since they were little. They could all 4 tell you that I've taught them to listen to their tummy. I always would say to them when they were little, God gave us tummies to send our brains signals to survive, protect, and thrive. And so I used to tell them that in the context of like stranger danger, right? If something doesn't feel right in your tummy, you tell a safe person. So what I would go back and tell 18-year-old Christine is listen to your tummy. When your tummy is telling you something's wrong, make a change and be willing to be uncomfortable in the change, even if it's scary and unknown, even if you don't have a plan. Because 18-year-old Christine, she had a plan for her life. She had a plan for her scholarship. She had a plan for law school, and there was safety, right, and security in the plan. But I would also tell her that safety and security, while not a bad value, doesn't necessarily make the most compelling life that you deserve.
So I love that. And so, you are raising 4 beautiful girls, and times have changed, right? There's a lot of pressure around with social media that we never had. And, you know, how do you help them understand the awareness of everything around them? And what does like really tuning into their tummy even more than ever? What would you say was different from when we were 18, 19 years old versus now? I think that there's a lot of women that would like to know that.
Yeah. There's so many different ways you can answer this question. So my pensive look is I'm like, where do I even go with that? So there's a marked difference between my oldest, who's 23, and my youngest, who's 17, in terms of the influence of social media and the addiction to the screen, right? Like I can't get eyeballs. This is what I get. If you're watching this on video, I get peaks around the phone, and I don't necessarily have a magic answer or a magic bullet. Well, what I would say to mamas who are raising children today is sometimes we have to stop listening to this screaming in our head to try to fix, manage, and control what they're doing, and just lean into it and sit in there with them. Be ready when they're wanting and willing to talk to you. Because the younger mama that I was always like, talk to mommy. We'll have these conversations. We'll go on mommy-daughter dates. And I'm not saying that to be flippant. Those are beautiful things. And know each one of your kids, because mine are north, south, east, and west. If I do not invest quality time with Chelsea, my second child, and I do not wait and allow the power of the pause to take effect, I will never get those nuggets of gold. Because with Chelsea, I cannot force it. So you study your individual children. There's no one size fits all. And you make yourself available for those individual children, for them to open up when the time allows. Because each child is going to have a different comfort level with what they share and when they share it. You just have to be willing to listen, not judge, and not try to control it.
I think that's really great advice. I'm the same thing. Mine are definitely, I'm trying to think who would be. West would definitely be Quinn. Let's just give Joss the north just because he's up north. And let's give Asher the south because she's thinking she wants to go. So I'm missing an east right now. But, oh, no, no, my bonus daughter's an east. Oh, my gosh, I've got a north, south, east, and west as well. I love what you said. That's why I love when the one thing I recommend for everybody is to take the 5 love language test for their kids as well and understand what matters to your kids. I think sometimes we don't understand that there's no difference between kids and, sorry, Martha.
It's
and
okay.
dogs.
It's a real life podcast. Dogs are dogs.
Real life. Martha's over there and she's having a good time. But I think that, we always talk that the God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So that you need to listen a little bit more than you talk all of the time. And I love what I love what you said, because you have to accept and appreciate them as individuals. And why do you think, well, I think I'm going to answer my own question, but I'm going to let you answer it because, like you said, certainty is a big thing for you. So when you had your first one and when you had your second one and you finally realized that they were different and you couldn't parent, so the certainty girl, right? The law girl, the this girl, what did you learn even more from a parenting perspective from that first to the second?
Oof. Wow, you're going back in the annals of
back in the archives. We're going back in
the archives. I'm going to be answering this just as honestly as I can, and I will just say I'm not sure I could actually remember, because unlike some people who have kids spaced apart or only have 2, like I just kept having babies. And so I know, like, even in pregnancy with Chelsea, it was different than with Chloe. And some of it is first to second, but it was a really hard pregnancy. Chelsea was a very different child. I remember she crawled at 8 months, walked at 11, and Chloe was happy to be held until 13 or 14 months. I don't know if I could even, I mean, they're 23 and 21 now. They still call each other best friend. They live together. They literally just moved out into separate places with their partners. And they have a beautiful polarity. And it's so interesting because we talk about polarity in the context of intimate relationships, but I've really been able to study the polarity between my first and second daughters. And it's really gets muddled by the time you get to 3 and 4. We just came back from Hawaii and the dynamic with the 4 was a cluster F. I mean, it was rough because there are so many differences in personalities. But watching my older 2 on vacation, because I get to see them, a little bit more intensely than I have in years. There is still that beautiful polarity. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but I noticed early on with milestones that they were very different, but I'm not sure I was doing enough personal work on myself to be dialed in at that time to know how it would show up personality wise. I think I was still, no, I don't think, I know I was still forcing a one size fits all parenting, and I did it for years. And I don't live in a state of regret, but I have misgivings about the way that I parented early on. I think it ruined my joy in it because I didn't do that tweaking of the way I talked to them and the rules we had for them. It was like, this is what the rules are. And because mommy said so. And there was some of that influence from the church that I do wish hadn't been in there. Some ways that I was scanning the horizon, again, watching what every other mama was doing, not asking, who are you as a mama? I was desperate for examples because I didn't have a good example growing up. And what I did is I contorted my beautiful self to fit the mold of other mamas that I was not created to be like. And I really lost a lot of years of joy. And I'm sure that it wasn't as effective as it could have been for their unique little personalities.
That's exactly what I was going for. That is exactly like, just who once again did you become in the meantime? And I think, like you said, so many times we're not just trying to fit in the mold, but trying to fit in the mold of being the perfect mama, and then trying to fit in the mold of being the perfect this and being the perfect
Right.
that, and making sure my kids are the best. So, obviously,
Exhausting. It's
yeah,
exhausting and it's
yeah,
ineffective.
yeah. And so I think that, there's I think a lot of people can relate to that. That's why I really wanted you to share that. I've always been the wild child. And, I just did a post yesterday, though, about now for me, just of where the focus is for me is really creating the moments with my family right now, because I was traveling so much on the road. I was always gone. I was schlepping one kid in one arm and, had one on the boob on the other arm. And maybe I was working all the time, but I was always making them part of the experience. And I got a lot of heat from people. A lot of people like, what is she doing? And I'm like, I'm just doing me. And I didn't listen to a lot of the noise, especially around the parenting side of it, because I wasn't your traditional parent at all.
Right.
Because my life job style was just very different. But there are a lot of people, I think, right now that are feeling like, oh my gosh, like if I don't do this, is someone going to write about me on social media, tell me that I'm not great? And I always say, you know what?
Yes, they are.
They are.
Absolutely are. And it doesn't matter.
No, it really doesn't matter, because, they're still going to, either way, they're still going to, either they're going to love you, they're going to like you, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's why staying true is so important. And that's why I just adore you, and just who you are, because you're really true. You're really true to yourself. And like, you're true to when it's hard, that you embrace the hard. You really do embrace that hard. So the question, and you got a lot hard to deal with. I mean, just your profession itself. I mean, just dealing with families and the challenges that they go through. Can you talk a little bit about what's been one of the hardest times in your profession?
Oh, absolutely. If I hadn't already said this, I'm a family law attorney. So I deal with divorce and custody and support and all that. Most attorneys will run as far as they can from it. For me, there's no area of law I'd practice and there's nothing else I'd rather do, because this is what I'm good at. I'm passionate about it, but I live a lot in the both and. I think that life is actually the both and. And by the way, Loren, I figured out that that's probably my first book, which is Living Life in the Both and. And so in this profession, I am so honored, let me just say that, to be able to serve my clients, who are primarily women, but I've had a lot of wonderful men over the years, in their most darkest times, and help them start on the path of healing and growth and transformation, even while they're going through these crises. However, sometimes, going back to this wild child, I've been told I'm too much, I talk too much, I'm too loud, too brash, too bold, from the time I can remember. I was born in 1971, and in 1971, my mom couldn't even get a credit card in her own name. So we're talking like a time where women were not supposed to make waves. I've always made waves. I've always made waves. Here's the problem: is if you are just leaning into that bold, brash part of yourself and you're not using wisdom and discernment, you can really fuck up. And you can fuck up and totally unintentionally. So for me, in my career, I had a case where I believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that my guy should have custody of this little guy, because this woman was batshit crazy, abusive, like really a borderline lunatic. She was so unstable, and the judge would sometimes storm off the bench because he'd get so angry at her. So when the decision came down to keep custody with her, I was outraged. And I was so outraged because the decision was so poorly written, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I wrote an appeal to the Second District Appellate Court, and they denied my appeal. And in their decision, in my belief and living in my outrage and passion, I was 100% convinced they didn't read the record and they didn't do their job. And so I wrote a scathing motion to reconsider to the appellate court. It lacked wisdom. It was disrespectful. And I was held in direct criminal contempt in front of the appellate court. And it was one of the most humiliating, reputation destroying events of my career. No, it wasn't one of, it was there's nothing that's ever come close. I had to go down there, and they they took the extraordinary step of requiring me to come personally before them, the 3-panel justices. And if you can picture this, walking into this appellate court, it is a 2-story courtroom with dark mahogany walls. And if you've ever seen the Supreme Court, how they sit up high for reverence, but they also sit up high for intimidation. Don't let them fool you. And the 3 of them walked out, including the person who wrote the opinion that I had scathingly destroyed in my motion to reconsider. And I took the approach of humility. I accepted responsibility, but it was a brutal hearing. And I was held in direct criminal contempt the day before I buried my father. And then this court took the extraordinary step to publish the opinion holding me in contempt and publish the audio of my hearing. And so when I came to the courthouse the next week, you could actually hear people listening to it in the hallways. And it was a blindingly humiliating experience. And I had to make a decision of how I was going to respond to that. I'm very proud of the person I am and how I handled it. But I would never want to go through that again.
But I know that you learned something really pretty powerful.
I learned a number of things, and I actually saw, it's interesting you'd say that, because I saw the justice that I had insulted at a luncheon recently, and I was inches away from going up to her and thanking her for holding me in direct criminal contempt. I just wasn't sure it was wise since I'm still practicing law. But I remember feeling, and this was just last month, I remember feeling just a deep sense of gratitude for Justice Hutchinson. And it was because I needed to learn that living in a state of outrage made me lose perspective. So I have a quote that I created, which says, when your passion makes you lose perspective, you lose the power of persuasion. And the most important thing I learned is there's no one perspective that is exactly right. And if I'm going to be the most effective attorney, the most effective mama, the most effective podcaster, most effective human being, I need to be able to be persuasive. I need to be able to be inspirational. And to do that, I have to come at situations with humility and openness. I have to be able to, like you said, 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. It changed me as a human being. And it also taught me that I can do really fucking hard things. And I can regain that reputation by consistently living in integrity. And as I stand here today, I have a very strong reputation at that courthouse, and probably, well, I know among the justices. And here's why. I'll leave this one last comment. When I finished you have to do a purge. So I did the things they asked me to do to release the finding of contempt. The appellate court actually took the extraordinary step of writing a letter to the Attorney Registration Disciplinary Commission and said that I had handled myself with such a high degree of integrity that they asked them not to take any disciplinary action against me. So what did I learn? Even when you fall hard, even when you make huge mistakes, if you act in your integrity and you do everything possible to fix what you might have broken in the process, you don't just have your reputation back, you are now elevated, not just in the world, but within your own heart.
Yep. And it's a part of you that you remember that you're unshakable, right? That you know that I think I shared this with you. I always say every day before I leave my house, I say, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know, my intentions are good. And so I think that reminds me of your situation. Like, you know who you are. Like, you know that your intention was good. You know that you were there to serve the greater good. And, right, like, you just reacted, right? It just took them. And that what we learn from, like, just not taking that breath sometimes, that breath could be the most important thing. But you needed that. You needed that expression. You needed it. And I think that, like you said, like, to embrace that and to be like, hey, I take 100% ownership for this. And so when was that? What year was that?
That was in 2016, because like I said, I got held in contempt the day before I buried my father. That was a year I would never want to repeat. A lot of things were really hard.
There was a lot going on. It seems like it might have been, if it was the day before you died, it probably was a stacking effect as well. Right. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't realize some of the decisions that we're actually making we're stacking other things that are going on in our lives, and why it's so important
Right.
to just hang on. Let me just take a breath. Once again, as you know, I always say, always return to the breath. But
Can I tie something back though, Lauren? I don't want to jump in here, but I want to tie this back to your question about parenthood just real briefly. Because what I did in that case is I was so sure I was right. I was so sure that my position was righteous that I went barreling in because something you said stuck out to me when you said I reacted. I absolutely reacted. What I didn't do was respond. And so when tying it back to parenting and parenting children in this day and age, reactionary parents are going to fall far short when it comes to parenting these kids with all the pressures they have on. We have to have the power of the pause. We have to go back to the breath, because if we've never been through a post-COVID world.
nope.
We've never experienced this. I always tell people I should have a PhD in raising girls, and I am so lost. There's no roadmap for this. But what I've learned through that particular experience and number of experiences, if I will take a breath, if I give that power of the pause and I give that space, I'm more better able as a parent and as a person, as a friend, to respond. Reaction very rarely leads to a righteous outcome, but responsiveness does. And so you're right. I mean, I wouldn't trade that experience. I would never choose it, but I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. It is interesting for these young ones. God bless them of what they've been through.
Mhm.
Even one of my kids. I think I like you so much because there's a friend of mine who's an attorney as well, and I had to deal with a very odd situation for one of my children. And I was like, if I'm going to hire somebody, I'm going to hire the best attorney. Her name's Elizabeth. You'll love her. And I remember going in there, and I remember exactly the situation that you shared. It's not exact, but it's a lot, like just of how she was always this humility about it. And,
Mhm.
and it ended up that the judge ended up apologizing to her. I was like,
Mm.
wow, like to see that, because the judge had made an assumption, right? Just
Mm.
based on whatever the situation was. But yeah, that's why I think now I'm realizing like why I just can't gonna wait to have you on the podcast as well. No, it's that passion, but it's also that part to go, you know what, I screwed up. Like I always say that, people say, what's the thing that you love your most about your husband? And one of the things I love most about him is he can say he's sorry. And I think there's a lot of
Absolutely.
people who can't do that. Like there's a part of them that they're just like so committed to, like, no, that this is how it is. No, I was right. And that humility is what makes us better. That humility
Yeah.
is what makes us realize that we're not always right, and that maybe there's something that I don't know. Maybe that I don't know what happened. Like I said, maybe someone didn't even know what you were going through right then
Right.
in your life. So
Absolutely.
what were you gonna say?
I said absolutely. I was just thinking one last comment to that. Part of what I'm so passionate about is living authentically. And whether it's humility or honesty or whatever it is, if we're going to build authentic lives, people who don't have humility, they lack authenticity. And authenticity gives you platforms to make a difference and contribute in the world, because people have bullshit meters. They can sniff it and smell it out. They may not always listen to that meter, but most people can tell when somebody is inauthentic. And so when you think about humility, if we want to live authentic lives, and that should be the goal of every human, that's one of my deepest passions, is to live the most authentic life, like you, is stay true.
Yep.
If we're going to do that, humility is absolutely essential. And I tell all my clients that when I meet with them, especially for the first time, I say, I'm a human being, and I am inviting you to call me out if I don't raise to the standards that I've promised you. And if it's a mistake, I'll fix it. And if it's not, I'll explain it. People are drawn to that. And then that gives you the better opportunity to contribute to the betterment of their lives.
I think that I'm gonna play off that further. I think they're starting to be drawn to it because I don't know how well
Mhm.
people's bullshit meters have been recently. I love
Ah,
social media. I think it's really beautiful, but I think there's been a lot of bullshit out there that people have believed. What was a great one? There was a really great one that I was going to share. Um, I just thought, just because of it, it was someone was holding a sign. It was so cute. I was thinking about it. Let me see. It was like, tell me, tell me tell me how much you're really, stop something like, tell me how much you're really making,
On social media, that post
that
that you
got
had
her.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, I know what you're
And
talking
I think
about.
there's been, I was sharing with you, I think there's been a lot of people, unfortunately, who haven't really been totally authentic with where they're at and how much work that it takes to do a podcast, to do a, to do an event, to do all of these, to all of this stuff. I think that, beautiful people who want to make a change in the world, who really want to help people like you and like me, that I think that there is like, no one's really been like, okay, if you really want to do it, you're going to need to spend this, and this, and you're going to need to buy ads, and you're going to need to spend $200,000 doing this and $200,000 doing that, or 15, whatever that it is. So I think that now that there's a little bit of an awakening right now, and people they have to be a little bit more discerning. They have to, be a little bit more aware. Follow people. I truly believe that you follow their personal life and follow not just like their business page, but maybe follow their personal life or show up. You know me. I mean, I have people come into my house. I mean, it's a little bit of chaos, but it is what it is, right? I got 3 dogs. I got TV, my husband listening to TV while he's working, and this coming over, and the handyman. But I want people to see that my life is real, that it's not just, smoke and mirrors. So I think that if there's anything that I would say for all of us, like we did grow up. Yeah, I'm born in '65. Same thing. We didn't have all of when you went over to someone's house, that was their house. You saw what was going on. You saw them at work. You saw how they worked, if they worked or if they didn't work, or if they, the results that they were getting. But I think the lesson that we can all, you and I and all of the women that we hang around, is just to show up. Hey, we're showing a reel right now within our group, right? We're posting naked pictures, not naked pictures, but photos of ourselves, very vulnerable. And I think that part of really living that authentic life is that vulnerability, not just with yourself, but with others, right? And people that you really trust and respect and admire.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Like, here's the thing. We can't change the world, by sheer force. All we can do is show up in our own authenticity. And really, it's about manifestation. I don't know if you said it, Tony said it, it's probably a combination of both. But it's like, if you want to build a tribe of amazing friends, become the friend that you want to draw into your life. And so for me, I look at it as like, it's just a one relationship at a time. It's one professional relationship at a time. Like, I can't change social media, but what I can do is show up and be like, hey, look, I'm going for an MRI. I'm fucking scared. I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that if I show up here and tell y'all what's really going on, somebody out there will feel less alone. And it's just serve the one.
Yeah.
And that's how we make the changes. It might take longer than we want, but it's what I can do in my capacity now.
And I think that I love that. And I think that that's what's most important. That's really what's most important. Like that, I think if I could just help one person, was it worth it? Like if one person listens to our podcast, would it be worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, who's to say what's enough, right?
Fair.
Who's to say what's enough? And it's like when I wrote my first book, and I was going to rewrite it, and everybody says, "Oh, Loren, it's going to cost too much. You're going to need to, you're not in that new mommy stage." But when you feel that pull, like I need to do this, I never knew that my book was going to save some random guy's life, because he picked it up in the, in the break room. So for you, it's really about, I kind of like, I don't know, at the beginning of the podcast, I ask you, what people misunderstand about you. I kind of like the word misunderstood personally, because I think there's a part of them that people like to have some misunderstanding. They like to make a assumption about who we are a little bit. And so for me, when I said that, I hope I meant that with all of my respect, because there's some part of us that's like, oh, they can't figure me out. I remember when I first started dating Z, and everybody was like, oh, does he not like me? this is this and that. And so there was, and that was within themselves, a part of
Mm-hmm.
themselves that didn't understand, didn't have the certainty within themselves to be like, whatever, like, you like me, like, you just don't, you don't care for me, whatever. And my husband has taught me that, that what happens with people, you can see what shows up for them when they feel like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? What did they, why don't they like me? Why doesn't he respond to me? Why doesn't this and that? And there's a part of me that is just kind of like, interesting. I wonder if they're going to take the time to
Mm-hmm.
develop this relationship and get to know all parts of me. Even
Okay, so
you
can I
said
go
it.
back to
But
that?
you said it. Even you said it. Like when you met me, when
Yeah,
you first met me, right?
yeah.
You said I was scary. Yeah.
So let's be honest, some days you still are, but I love you now. I
But
want to go.
my intention is good.
I
That's
have
the thing.
I have observed your heart and I've watched your actions. And I want to, can I go back to this because you got me thinking.
Yes.
And again, in the line with being humble and being willing to admit when you may have missed the mark on something, I'm gonna go back and revise that a little bit because I'm not sure my answer, if now that I'm thinking about it, is completely in line because I do enjoy being a mystery to people.
Hmm.
And it kind of fuels me because I don't want to be put in a box. I don't want to be easy to figure out. I've always sort of embraced the fact that I'm a quagmire. I'm a conundrum. Being a really strong outspoken woman in the evangelical church for years caused me a lot of pain because I was looked at as unsubmissive, ungodly. I don't even know where I could begin on that. That's a whole other podcast. And it used to cause me pain. And then I got to the point where I didn't care anymore. I started to be like, I mean, I would say God did not make me. I didn't come off the assembly line and have him go, all right, who screwed this one up? Start over. I came off the assembly line, I would assume much like you did. And God went, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be so fun because God's a creative God. He's an intentional God. And I know that, and that's why I started Girl Out of Borders. I want women to lean into who they are, but also how they were designed to be, because I don't want to chisel my edges. And if that means people don't understand me, I'm okay with that. And
That's fine.
I'll use a last little example here from my court experience today. I think I was talking about that a little bit before we hopped on here. I went to court and I had the unfortunate but necessary experience of sending a litigant to jail. Well, I didn't, the judge did, but on my request. And his attorney was going off, being loud and brash and rude and saying just things that weren't true. And I just held the line in my integrity. And even though maybe other people were kind of like, what? They can't really get a line on me. My conversation on the way home, my client's new spouse said to me, I just want you to know how much I respect the way that you showed up and how you stayed in your integrity. It may not make sense to the world, but I'm not here to please the world. And so, I'm fine being misunderstood. So I'm going to
Good.
revise my
That's good.
earlier
I'm
statement.
happy to hear that. It's so funny. It was funny because I love that you said that because I really do believe that God looked and goes, "Oh, this one's going to be fun. Ooh, we're going to see a lot of this one." And my mother
Mhm.
always goes back to it, and I think it was my daughter did the same thing, and that was my mother's like, "Oh, if Ralph Lauren could have seen you at 2 years old, 3 years old, he would have created a whole line of clothing because I like mismatched everything. I put like
Mhm.
all crazy shit on, like, and my daughter took after me. She put like her bathing suit top on over every outfit, and people are like, is she really going to let her daughter go out in public like that? And I'm like, yep, I am. Am I going to go out in public? Yep, I'm going to do that. People are like, even with Asher now, I don't think she's going to be listening to this, but it's okay if she is. I think a lot of people go, and when's she going to outgrow that goth age? When is she going to outgrow it? I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. She's who she is. I don't care as long as she's happy and she's healthy and she loves who she is and what she stands for and she has a great work ethic. I'm good, you know?
Yep,
So
that's exactly correct. And being back to the whole, like, you know, this is going to be fun. I mean, my dad used to say to me, I just wish you'd be a wallflower. Like my dad wanted me to to stop being such a difficult person and not have to be so much work. Well, the girl that was not a wallflower and was so much work also became a 5-time state champion and earned her law degree and was the first person in my entire family to get a postdoctorate degree. So I'll be fine not being a wallflower, and Asher's doing just fine.
She's doing just fine. And she's creating
Just
a new
fine.
jewelry line. And, oh gosh, and whatever else she can do, the most creative little one. So I have loved spending this time with you. My last question, which I ask everybody, is what is one thing that you do to stay true to yourself every day?
The one thing I would say I do every single day to stay true to myself is first thing in the morning, I do a quiet time. And my quiet time, it used to be, I would do a quiet time, so that's when I'd read my Bible. It has evolved over the years. It's when I read my personal development work, I do my gratitude journal. But I give the first part of every single day to my spiritual and personal development. And I can't remember the last time I've missed.
Amen. You can't give what you don't have, right? So you got to fill up.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome 45 minutes with you. I've loved it. And how can people find out more about you and all that you're doing?
Well, I have a new beautiful website. It's still developing, but it's thechristinegale.com because Christine Gale was taken. So I decided to be the Christine Gale. I'm on Instagram at the same, the Christine Gale. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, and I'm working on TikTok. So be patient and give me grace.
One thing at a time.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And I'll see you in a couple hours.
Okay, love you.
How awesome was today? Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends to join as well. I'm here for you with fabulous content, great guests, and lots of giveaways. To learn more of how I have taken what I've learned, applied it to my life, helped others find their true voice, text TRUE to 26786, which will give you my top tune-ups and a complimentary 15-minute discovery call with one of our coaches. And remember, keep in touch with me on Instagram at I am Loren Lahav, Facebook Loren Lahav Official, Clubhouse Loren Lahav. Make sure you text TRUE, TRUE, to 26786. Text TRUE, TRUE, to 26786. And remember to always stay true to the amazing person you are.